And welcome into the Change-Up on WOY Sports here with Matt Digby and Tom Bill. Guys, it's a rainy Thursday morning, but it's a Thursday morning where college football comes on tonight. We are here. Football season is here. We had a good week of high school football last week. A lot of good things happened. We saw a couple teams maybe a little bit surprise us. What's your first impressions of the first week of high school football?
First impressions, I think it was just, kind of what I was expecting. A lot of teams kind of maybe over-eager to finally start the season after hitting each other, and that's something we'll talk about throughout the show, how teams are so tired of playing against each other. And I was able to speak with Paul Price, the new head coach at Concord University. He said that verbatim. They're tired of playing each other. It's finally nice to be in a situation where you're playing not just other teams in scrimmages like they were doing a couple weekends ago, but now doing so on a competitive stage where every game matters, and that's what's really got me excited.
Well, I'll get specific for my big takeaway from week one on the high school scene. Westside coming in against Liberty, avenging last year's 33-6 loss with a major 44-0 win. They really came out. They were impressive in that first game. I was there for the first quarter or so. They looked really, really good.
Yeah, and that was, I think, the one thing I was most interested in seeing. Darren Thomas, a guy we've gotten to know over several months, him coming back as football head coach, because we weren't here when he was previously head coach for the Renegades, but just seeing how the players adjusted to him because they already knew him for many, many years. And I think also the other thing was Westside did have a lot of great senior talent that graduated, but they have plenty of guys that were able to step up. And Liberty has an opportunity to get back on track this Friday when they go over to Oak Hill for the Red Devil season opener. But it's Westside, I think, right now is laid the foundation for exactly the way they wanted it to go.
Yeah, I think my first impression was we saw a handful of top plays early on. Some good plays out there. We saw a one-hander from Pivots Dempsey. You guys had just a handful out there.
Outstanding catch, yeah.
I mean, some good high school football to get the season started. Looks like Singaway is going to be a place to probably sneak into the playoffs kind of easily. We only saw, one Fayette County team win a game last week? Fayetteville?
I think it would have been Fayetteville, yeah. Midland Trail lost. Meadowbridge did get a road win at Van. That was a tough game for them last year, opening up with a loss to the Bulldogs. This year they're able to go all the way to Van and get the win, so that's going to have them fired up. They're home for their home opener on Friday against Tug Valley. So the Wildcats, they're also in a great situation. They have the new head coach, Dwayne Reichard, in not just in period, but he's also replacing Larry McClintock, the winningest high school coach in West Virginia high school football history. You talk about not wanting to be the person who follows the guy. Well, that's exactly what Reichard is, and so far he's undefeated.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah, and also we can talk more high school football coming up later in the show. We'll speak with Reed Amos, the commissioner of the Mountain East Conference. It'll come up a little bit later, but first let's go ahead and talk some college football. The Mountaineers season getting ready to kick off this Saturday at noon.
Finally, time for Mountaineer football, noon o'clock kickoff, with the Tigers of Missouri coming all the way to Morgantown. A matchup I've been saying on Newswatch, old Big 12 versus current Big 12. So that's a nice little touch to it. And right now, WVU the favorite by 10. Right now, if I had to pick a final score, I would go Mountaineers by 11. But I think it's all going to depend, I think, the first quarter. Like we talked about, you certainly can't win a game in the first quarter, but you can set the tone, and you are certainly capable of losing the game in the first quarter. I think Missouri, just because maybe miscommunication, it will be Barry Odom, his first game as a head coach after, he was only there for 1 year as an assistant, having been at Memphis for several years. So I think that might prove to be maybe too big a stage for him, but Dana Holgerson, I think, will have his guys ready to play.
Hey, if you got them by 11, you should throw some money on it, because their most recent spread I saw, I think, was 9. So you're pretty much right on right there. I think it'll be a good start for WVU, an SEC opponent, so that's always a challenge when you face someone from that conference. They typically go through tough schedules, and they come ready to play. But I think this is a great opportunity for WVU because it's a team that's replacing a lot of their guys on offense, and I think the Mountaineers can come in and get that first win under their belt against a tough team and really give them confidence moving forward.
Yeah, I think for me personally, like you said, we were talking the other day, we saw 9 points, and you actually asked me if I'd take him for 9. I said, well, that's a little closer than I'd like. But for me, I think the Mountaineers season, starting at noon, they've historically had trouble at noon games. They do not wake up for noon games. And that's really, you could say that across the landscape of college football. Those noon games will sneak up on you and get you in a heartbeat, especially the opening game. I mean, you could look up at 2 o'clock and all of a sudden you're in the third quarter and it's a tie ball game. So this one actually scares me a little bit more than I thought it would. Right now, I'd take 10. I'd take 10
Yeah.
easily.
See, that makes me nervous to hear something like the team doesn't get up for an earlier start, because that speaks to a team's discipline and the way they prepare for games. So if they're not getting up for these early starts, it makes you question, kind of the mindset of those guys. So hopefully that's not an issue in these early weeks.
Yeah, and the 2 games I was at last year, those were both noon kickoffs. One was against Texas Tech, who had an outstanding quarterback performance from Patrick Mahomes II. He's one of the elite quarterbacks, and certainly in that discussion when you talk about the Big 12 having a plethora of great quarterbacks. And then the other was against Iowa State. And yeah, you could kind of see, it was still early part of the day kind of behavior, not fully awake 100%. Granted, the Iowa State game, it was miserable, the weather. It was, I remember Dana Holgerson saying, for a time the play kind of matched the weather. It was very blah, so to speak. But so the rainy conditions didn't help. But yeah, it was. There was definitely a difference what I saw from when they played at noon, specifically here in Morgantown, as opposed to a 3:30 game or a 7 o'clock game.
Well, that's something that we've talked a lot about them taking the next step this year. 8-5 made a bowl game last year. They want to go to that next level. Those are the types of things that they're going to need to change. You need to show up for a game that starts at noon, and you need to be ready to go and flying around at that opening kickoff. You can't wait until the second and third series, second quarter. You got to be ready to go right away if you want to be one of those elite teams in college football. I mean, this is the big time here, and they're in a position where they can really make a run at this thing if everyone's focused and has the right mindset.
They definitely, I think, being the first game of the season really, really helps on this noon kickoff. You're going to have all that excitement, like we keep saying, that you're not hitting each other anymore in practice. I think this one helps being at noon, being the first game. I think the excitement will be there, but historically, you get kind of late in the season, that noon game hits you, especially with the Mountaineers being in the Big 12. You'd figure a home game would work in our advantage because a lot of these, the teams out west
coming from different time zones.
Yeah, we're talking about the
Yeah.
only school in the Big 12 that's in the Eastern time zone. Everyone else is in the Central, an hour behind us, so it'd be 11 a.m. for them.
But you got to figure if the week before they played a 7:30, let's throw Oklahoma out there. They're playing 7:30 Oklahoma game. Game doesn't end till almost midnight. You get on a plane at 3, 4 in the morning. You get in Morgantown the next day. That makes it a long week.
That's no excuse. You got a full week to come back and get yourself ready. I think if I'm not saying this is what they're using as an excuse, but I mean you got to come ready to prepare and ready to play when it comes time. Get your sleep in, get your rest in, do the things that you need to do, and be ready to go. The time shouldn't matter.
I mean, if anything, the one excuse they would potentially have is if they were to have a Saturday game and then go right back in action the following Thursday, have a Thursday night game. This year they don't. All the Mountaineer games are on Saturday.
That affects your practice schedule and the amount of days you have to prepare and stuff. When you're talking about number of days you have to prepare, that makes a difference. As far as the time and the time zone you play week to week, that's something that you should be able to adjust for fairly easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think time, just throughout the noon game aside, I think the Mountaineers will win this game. Like I said, 10 points, I'd take it all day long, a touchdown and a field goal basically to win the game. I'd take it, for the opening game, the opening
So you like that
season.
-9?
I don't like
Touchdown
the
and the field goal. That's all you need.
Yeah, I mean, I still wouldn't. I wouldn't bet. Well, I never bet on the Mountaineers. That just goes against my religion to bet on the Mountaineers. But
this is all for fun, by the way.
There you go. Yeah.
And purely hypothetical. But I'm curious to know also, David, your take on the schedule, because I saw this last year, and now we're seeing it this year. You have a team from Missouri's a Power 5 conference. Last year, Georgia Southern was FBS, but not a Power 5 team. Then you have the FCS game. Then you have the bye week. I know Holgerson is not that big a fan, and I wouldn't expect him to be a fan of having a bye week that early in the season. Although, granted, it gives you extra time to prepare for a big game, in this case, BYU on the 24th in Washington, D.C.
I mean, I think you always hear the coach talk saying, all right, the bye week's coming too early. It doesn't fit into what we have planned out. But I think in this case, the bye week helps the Mountaineers, especially with all the injuries on defense that they've suffered. That gives them an extra week early on to get healthy, get experience. And plus, when you have so many freshmen, it's good to take 2 weeks, get 2 solid wins under your belt. Missouri game puts you on a national landscape. You don't want to say it, but get an easy win against that FCS opponent. Sit back, see what you got, get healthy, get these guys off these DUI suspensions and everything else. You have to bring the defense back together. I think the extra week actually kind of fit perfect this time.
Well, and if you flip things around, say they go in and they just don't show up and they lose to Missouri, having that early bye week gives them a chance to kind of reset and refocus their season, so it doesn't things don't spiral out of control from there. As a coach, obviously you always like to have the bye as late as possible because injuries and things tend to accumulate later in the season, become more of an issue. But you deal with the cards that you're dealt there. Marshall's got to deal with a week 1 bye, which is kind of insane. But
that's the first time I've ever heard of a team I covered where a team has the bye week to start the season. I've seen it in high school here with West Virginia.
If you're a coach, you can't draw it up any worse than that.
No. Oh, we see it with Oak Hill in high school, just down the road.
Oak Hill had week 1 off this past week. Woodrow Wilson had week 1 off last year, so this would have been their first game of the season. So it's very interesting. Coach, what I saw when I talked to Jason Blankenship from Oak Hill, he says, it just gives them another chance to practice. Gives them a chance to correct, some of the things that may not have gone the way they wanted to when you were at their scrimmage at Greenbrier East, and I think they'll be ready to play in now a matchup of Class AA versus Class AA when they welcome Liberty to John P. Duda Stadium on Friday night.
The Staying on the Mountaineers actually heard a interview yesterday on a different outlet they brought in a guy from Vegas who kind of does the analytics of the Mountaineers season, and he was telling them, he said it could go really good or really bad. They have 2 different models. They said he could see the Mountaineers every time they put in projections into the computer and it spit it out. It came out 2 wins, or it also came out undefeated. I found that extremely interesting. The middle ground was 8 games. The middle ground that they came out with was 8 games. The lowest was 2 games. So, analytics gets a little quirky sometimes, but it was interesting. And he even said Vegas really has their eyes on the Mountaineers this year because they are one of the teams that can make a run for it.
Yeah,
do you guys see this run?
I don't think they're winning 2 games, so that's definitely on the lower end.
It all depends because you hate to use the term stupid losses, but you and I can attest to this, David. The fact is, they probably should have beaten Kansas State in the regular season finale. They were up at halftime, and then they kind of let the Wildcats get back in the game. They were able to
Holgorsen on the hot seat because everybody knew they should have won it.
Exactly. They should have won Kansas State. I know there are a fair amount of fans who believe they could have won the Oklahoma State game. I'm not sure I would have predicted WVU to win that game, but they certainly did enough to at least force it to overtime. If they hadn't gotten in that hole against the Cowboys, I think maybe they could have won in regulation.
Well, I think it's all going to depend on the development of the defense this year. They're already down one of their key guys in the secondary for the season, and there's some big question marks because of guys that have graduated and gone on to the NFL. So I think a lot of their success is going to be predicated on that defense. We expect Skylar Howard to make a big jump at quarterback. It seems like he's primed to do that. Everything seems to indicate that. Their defense is probably the X factor, though.
Yeah. So do you have 8 games, over or under?
Right now, I'd say over.
Over. 8 games, over, under?
I'll give a conservative over. Yeah. I think I could see them winning 9, maybe even 10 games.
Yeah.
I think we've all kind of been in agreement the Big 12 will probably be the team that once again is kind of sneaking into the playoff, trying to get that committee to get somebody in there like they did Oklahoma last year. Easily, I see 2 lost teams winning this Big 12 conference. So Mountaineers losing 2 games, it's not that daggone bad at all.
It's not that bad, but it's also in terms of the whole performance. We go back to the very first year of the playoff. What's one of the reasons Ohio State was able to sneak in at number 4 was because their final game, they beat a very good Wisconsin team 59-0. And it wasn't even close. So that's going to be the thing, not just if you win, but how you win. If West Virginia can put up some style points against, in Oklahoma, if they're able to pull off what it would be an upset win, if they're able to beat TCU or Baylor,
would be key for them. That would certainly help their resume.
And all 3 of those games, by the way, are in Morgantown, so that's definitely going to help too.
Yeah, because I think Texas Tech gets a win against West Virginia this year because it'll be down in. Where's it at? Lubbock?
It will be in Lubbock. Mahomes is back. Cliff Kingsbury, he's another guy who, like Holgorsen, is kind of on the hot seat in terms
Tom
of
Brady backup.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's actually Holgorsen's roommate at one point.
Oh, really?
They were, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they only have 4 road games this season, correct?
They do, yeah.
So I mean, that's another thing that we haven't really talked about. That's a huge factor for them. Only having to go out on the road especially in the Big 12, where you have to do so much travel when you go out on the road. To only have to do that 4 times that's absolutely massive.
They're also considering the BYU game in Washington, D.C. at the Redskins place.
But that's not that far for them compared to
compared to Texas or Texas Tech.
Even BYU, they got to go a long way.
I mean, it's still an away game. You're still, you're not sleeping in your own bed.
They
don't anyways because they go to the hotel the night before.
Absolutely, but overall, that's a very advantageous schedule for them in terms of travel.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's a ton of alumni in the D.C., Maryland, that little area right there, tri-state area, that they'll pack Redskins Stadium with Mountaineer fans. So it is technically, I agree it's a home game.
For sure.
And that's what they're saying. That's what Vegas is saying, is that the Mountaineers actually have the schedule to go on a run of this sort where they can see them actually going undefeated. Again, I go back to the point in saying, no, the Big 12's got at least one team that's going to bite you. Oklahoma State, I think, is going to be improved this year. We heard Dale Wolfley tell us last week that Oklahoma State was going to be someone to contend with. Oklahoma kind of has a recent history under Coach Stoops of not only not winning the big bowl games, but he also slips up during the regular season too. So I think Oklahoma definitely leaves a window open for somebody. So why not the Mountaineers?
Absolutely. I know Texas, for example. I'm not saying Texas is going to win, but I think they've kind of turned the corner. They've done what they wanted to accomplish under Charlie Strong. That big upset win over Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry last year definitely played a big role. So, and WVU has to go to Austin, so that's always going to be an exciting atmosphere for them.
Yeah, and I think Charlie Strong is really eager to prove that he can make things work in Texas. I know the first few years didn't go so well, but I think he's a really good coach. I think he believes in his system and his way of doing things, so he's going to be eager to kind of take that next jump as well. The conference is going to be really, really tough, but like I said, with that, the development of Skylar Howard, the advantageous schedule, it sets the Mountaineers up in a really, really good position for this year.
Yeah, and we've talked to a ton of people about this Mountaineer season coming up, including Dale Wolfley, and I think the excitement keeps on building. It's a lot to be excited about in Morgantown. Of course, Matt and myself will be there. Who are you covering this weekend? You
going to Concord.
Going to Concord?
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's Concord got this
Concord's got West Liberty. That's going to be a very exciting matchup, I think. Mountain Lions getting ready for year 1 under Paul Price. Garen Justice, the old head coach for the Mountain Lions, is now the offensive line coach at Florida Atlantic in the FBS. And so Paul Price is moving up from a defensive coordinator to in charge of the Mountain Lion football team. And I think this is going to be a great game because, you take a look at just this game alone. It came down to a last-minute field goal for the Hilltoppers, and they were able to get out of home with the win over the Mountain Lions, although they ended up going 5-6 on the season. Concord also never really found the momentum they were looking for, but I think it's kind of like a cycle in a way because 2014, when Concord went 13-1 and made the Division II National Semifinals, Garen Justice was one of the first to admit there were a lot of breaks that went their way. 2015, those breaks did not go their way. Now, granted, they were very close games. All the losses, I think, were last-second scores is what it came down to. Last-minute lapses of concentration on defense for the Mountain Lions. Now they can have an opportunity to see if they can correct those mistakes. I think they'll be able to do that against West Liberty.
All right, we'll save that thought, and we'll get some thoughts from Tom here, too. But also, Reed Amos is going to join us coming up next, the commissioner of the Mountain East Conference, here on the Change Up on WAY Sports. And welcome back into the Change Up on WAY Sports here with Matt and Tom. Guys, we hit up WVU football, talked a little bit of high school football, but we also talked some Mountain East Conference, a little bit of Concord football. But joining us now is Adam Zundell, the Senior Commissioner for Communications for the Mountain East Conference. Adam, thanks for joining us, bud. How's it going up there? You guys ready to get this season started?
Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of like sports teams as well. We kind of take a little bit of an off season, and then we're kind of ready to go in another cycle for another year.
Well, good deal. What's the big news in the conference this year? What are you guys most excited about going into the season?
Gosh, there's so many different avenues to go. What a tremendous year last year. In just our third year of existence, having a national champion and volleyball, and obviously two teams in the football playoffs and basketball. Sending a team to Elite Eight softball, and you think, you wonder, and then maybe a little bit worried, did we peak? But we can't look at it that way. So we're just looking to continue to build, and I don't think our teams are going backwards. I think our teams are continuing to go forward, and so I think it's going to be a real exciting year to see. We had such a great year, and that bar is really high, but I think we're going to be at that bar or above it in the coming years. That's really the only way to look at it.
And with the success you guys had in general last year and also the year before, because I remember a couple of years ago, University of Charleston men's soccer making their national championship game. How does that help your brand from a national exposure standpoint, because you guys are so fairly new to the Division II game? Well,
branding is key, and we heard it during the football media day. And some of the coaches that were part of the West Virginia Conference, and there are not a lot of them left anymore, in terms of football coaches in our league, and say they go in and say Mountain East and Shepherd's run in the national championship and the success that Charleston had and the success Concord had the year before, that means something. They go, oh, okay, they know what that means, and that's just in football. Basketball, you look around, I mean, not only the success that West Liberty has, but, all of our programs doing so well, and the kind of the run and gun mentality that you go, oh, Mountain East, that's a lot of points. It's exciting. There's high level scoring. So we have built a brand across different sports that allows us to reach student athletes and recruits, to help our schools promote themselves. But then on top of that, the alumni, it just feels, I think, the success gives the league and the teams in it an air of confidence and, a way to feel good about themselves. And I think that permeates through everybody.
Adam, you talked about building the brand, building the conference. What are some of the areas that you guys are looking to do that in, and how are you doing it?
Well, as a communications guy, and the commissioner's obviously a communications guy, we want to spread our message, and that we do that through a variety of media. The deal with our Thursday night game of the week has really established a landing spot for our fans and a consistent presence on those nights. And then, of course, during those games, we can tell our stories, and not just our football stories, our volleyball stories, our cross-country stories. And then we extend that into the basketball. So just having a consistent presence, leveraging the media and a media that's available to us, whether it's webcasts and radio and podcasts and the like. We just want to get our message out because we have really good stories to tell, not just individually among the student athletes, but collectively with our teams and with our institutions. And we just try to find as many different avenues to tell that story so that we can reach our fans and our audience.
Adam, is there an inside look that you can give us? Are you guys talking to some other schools maybe outside the state about joining the conference? I don't want to get you in trouble or anything. Is there anything you can share with us about possible expansion?
Well, what I will say is that this has been a really interesting time in Division II with the expansion. You've seen the growth in the GMAC and them trying to acquire a football league, and a lot of the Ohio schools, football playing schools breaking away from another league. And so you never close any doors because things are shifting. You don't feel like you're always on steady ground, maybe that you did 20 years ago. But what I will say is that we have 12 really strong schools. We love the 12 that we have, and we feel really good about that. And so right now we feel like we're at a good spot, and we don't feel the immediate need to do some things. But of course, that's today. Things can change quickly.
And taking a look at those current 12 schools, 9 of them are from West Virginia, so they kind of have, and they were all part of that West Virginia Intercollegiate Athletic Conference before it disbanded in 2013 and joined the Mountain East. What's kind of the relationship that you guys have specifically with the non-West Virginia schools? You have Urbana, which is out on the western part of Ohio, Notre Dame College up by Cleveland, and then University of Virginia at Wise, which is a couple hours even from Concord.
Well, I tell you what, I think it's been interesting from my perspective to see everybody really buy in. And I, you might sound like, oh, of course he's going to say that, but really the collectiveness and the collective effort to work and make this work, this conference work, and make it the best that it can be has been really exceptional. There's no, 9-3. There really isn't. Everybody, I think, feels included. The commissioner does a really good job in terms of the collective nature. He likes to build some consensus, and so he doesn't just say, "Well, if Charleston wants this, we're going to do it." It's, "Hey, what do you think about this down at Wise? How does this impact you at Urbana?" So he does a really good job of making sure that when you're in this position at the league, you've got 12 schools. Not everybody's going to be happy all the time. But I think if you say, "Hey, look, this is what's good for the majority," then we have had 100% buy-in from our schools, and that's really, I think, all you can ask for.
Adam, what are some of the challenges you see day to day when you're trying to get 12 schools with unique interests to buy into a certain initiative or whatever you guys are pushing at the time?
It was just kind of, as I alluded to, what will be good for one school on one day might not be the best for the rest of the group. And so you have to have a vision of where you want to go. And so if this school wants a particular thing, is it the best thing for the league? And so you have to know what that looks like. And if it is, then you can try to build that consensus. If it's not, then you have to kind of go back and say, "Look, you want this, but it just can't happen for the rest of us, But that's kind of the challenge is every situation is so unique. We're starting, for example, video exchange in soccer, which might, this be kind of a small little thing, but some schools really want it and have the infrastructure and are ready to go and want to do all this stuff. Some schools were a little bit more reluctant to exchange video because, you have to have somebody out there and then you have to have somebody upload. There are some things that go along with it, but it's something that we felt was the right move for that sport. And so we had to just kind of build that consensus, say, look, this is going to be good for everybody, not just today, not just for 2016, but for this year and beyond. And so those are things like that are challenges in the office.
Well, Adam, football is right in front of us. Let's talk a little football with you. We know Shepherd did pretty good last year, and Concord's been on the map the past few years. They've had a coaching change and so forth. Do you expect Concord and Shepherd to kind of bear the flag, if you will, for the conference again this year, or is there somebody that we're maybe missing out on and the fans are sleeping on?
Well, certainly the success that Shepherd had last year and making it to the championship game was just an unbelievable experience. And I think you look at the championship game and it was a little bit of a letdown, but you go to that semifinal game with Grand Valley State in your backyard here in Shepherdstown, and an unbelievable experience, and beating, a true blue blood of the sport was really good for the league. But, one of the teams that I think, is Charleston, who made the NCAA playoffs last year and played probably outside of Grand Valley State the best team from the PSAC, which was IUP, and fell to them, and really kind of turnovers hurt them in that game. Probably didn't play as well as they would have liked, but IUP was really impressive, gave Shepherd all that they wanted. But, they have to have a new quarterback. Jeremy Johnson's gone. But Pat Kirkland, he's not from the Monte Cater tree, but he certainly has that philosophy: run the ball, stop the run, and then kind of everything else will go with it. So Charleston is one of those teams that will really, is really impressive. Glenville State has talent every year. Coach Hutch is going to try to put that together this year. Fairmont State played really well down the stretch. I know they played Concord pretty well down there last year in Athens. So see if Coach Woodman can kind of turn things around. So there's, I know coaches always like to say, and I'm looking at West Liberty with a starting quarterback, Dakota Conwell, who's got, 60-some touchdowns all together in the last couple of seasons. And that's the interesting thing about this year, 2016, is all the returning quarterbacks. And when you have that position settled, you got a chance in every game. And you go right down the line. You got Novak, Ziemba, Conwell, Hibbs at Fairmont State. And you've got the quarterbacks at Wesleyan, Kinnick at West Virginia State. This is a really good quarterback league. And when you've got that, you've got a chance for some upsets along the way, and you have a chance to go really deep in the playoffs.
Well, going back to 2013, though, kind of want to switch gears a bit. The excitement of creating a new conference, because it's not completely rare that we see new conferences every day, but we don't see them every day. This was a very new experience, very exciting experience. But kind of describe the process of getting everything in place, deciding on a logo, for instance, on what the Mountain East logo would be, how that was 3 years ago.
Well, it was really that was the exciting part of it, is that there were no templates. Ben Brownlee worked at the West Virginia Conference office and then worked at the Mountain East, but Commissioner Amos didn't have any real ties at the conference level. I didn't have any ties at the conference level. So when I stepped into the job, there's no template on what we did before, because there wasn't no before. So it was really challenging, and it's fun in the same time, because you were molding this thing from scratch, which is hard, but you're molding it how you want it to look, which is fun and exciting. Some of the things Commissioner Amos did in that year of transition, and one of those things was the logo and things like that. So there was a lot of groundwork that he kind of did on his own as he was acting commissioner before he was officially named commissioner, to kind of help things get started, so that when we were opening shop and getting ready to start, July 1, that there were some things in place. But other than that, it was a sprint. He says, we were kind of like a duck, and we tried to look smooth on the water and legs kicking like crazy underneath, and that certainly was the case. And now here, as we start year 4, things have settled a little bit. We've got some templates built, and now we can, it's just trying to build everything. And now we want to make it grow and really get it going, and try to have some initiatives in terms of student-athlete experience, and really enhance the championships, and making sure that our student athletes are happy and having a good experience whenever we can impact it is kind of our focus now.
So, Adam, we've seen player safety heavily emphasized from the NFL all the way down to the high school level, particularly as it relates to head trauma. What are some of the things that you guys are focusing on in the game of football, and maybe other sports as well where head trauma is an issue? What are some of the things that you guys are focusing on to try to prevent some of those issues?
Well, there's a sports summit that the NCAA hosts, and this has obviously been a huge topic. Some other things some other health-related issues that this group looked at was the college soccer season, which is condensed, 20-some games in 10 weeks, which is a lot of games and very taxing physically, not just the head trauma. But those were the kinds of things that group looked at. Commissioner Amos is part of the National Football Committee as well, and Dr. Brian Hainline, who's one of the leading experts in this head trauma field, is going and having them updates and things that they can do in terms of the helmets, in terms of the rest, in terms of recognizing the concussions. And so that education and dialogue is continuing. And I think one of the positive things that the commissioner relayed back to us is that football will go on. I think there's some fear that the sport as we know it will go away. But I think with the advance in technology and the advance of awareness, we can play the game the way it's supposed to be played for a long, long time.
But how safe can you really make it? Because at the end of the day, it's a sport that's inherently violent.
Well, I think in terms of the education, and it starts at the youth level, but it also starts with the recognition from the trainers and from the athletes to know, I'm not going to push it, I'm not going to go back in. So the action that happens on the field, you can try and make sure that people know what they're doing and don't go head down and don't go back into the game. It is a violent game, but it doesn't have some of the hits that happen, the way that they happen don't necessarily need to happen.
Right.
So if we can get those things continuing to move those forward, I think we'll see fewer injuries. Hopefully we'll see fewer injuries, and we'll see players, make better decisions, trainers make better decisions in terms of their health and livelihood.
Again, Adam Zundell, the Senior Commissioner for Communications for the Mountain East Conference, joining us here. Adam, just last few questions here. You have a lot of tradition in the league with, as we said before, Glenville State has a ton of tradition, Concord, obviously Shepherd, but Charleston's really an up-and-comer. If you could get that fan base in Charleston to get going, so I really have a two-part question. Is if you could get that Charleston fan base, is that what you guys look forward to? And do you guys really want to make your name known in the conference? Are you guys looking at soccer, maybe getting all the schools on board with soccer? Because really that's a sport that you could break into and build the conference with.
Well, in terms of the Charleston aspect, Charleston has a great tradition, and Charleston's a tough market. And that stadium it's impossible to fill for the University of Charleston. And so some of the things that we try to engage our fans, and not just the fans in Charleston, is those Thursday night games.
Right.
There's not a lot else going on, not just in that kind of city, but in other places. We want to have it a destination night. Hey, it's Thursday night. There's college football. Let's go watch it. And I think that those kinds of things engage our fans and alumni. And we've seen Charleston do well on Thursday nights. They like to play on Thursday nights. They're also getting a brand new basketball facility, which should be open, I think, in the second semester of 2007. This upcoming spring semester. So that basketball facility should hopefully draw some fans and excitement there as well. But they've done well on Thursday nights in terms of football attendance, even if it's can be a little bit deceiving in that big stadium that they play in. But in terms of soccer, I'm a soccer guy, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And the NCAA takes 4 teams per region, and the Mountain East Conference had 3 of those 4 teams last year in terms of Urbana, Notre Dame College, and the University of Charleston, obviously making it to the Final Four again. And Charleston's 2 losses were to Wheeling Jesuit that didn't make the NCAA tournament.
Right.
So it is a very good soccer league. But in terms of expanding that's kind of has to happen on campuses, and we're seeing that sport grow on the women's side. Glenville State has added soccer recently. Fairmont State is playing now and just started it last year. So we're seeing the sport grow on the women's side. It's a little bit more difficult on the men's side because of some of the gender equity issues that you can run into. Women's soccer is often the benefit at the high Division I level because there's no female equivalent for football, and so you see a lot of resources being poured into the women's side of the game. But those are some of the issues that you run into with the expansion of the men's game.
Do you guys communicate with the high schools here in the Mountain State at all about promoting soccer more, maybe establishing soccer programs on the high school level? Because we all can see that West Virginia high school soccer is really just in the beginning phases of development.
Well, I think what we want to do is make sure that those players know that there's opportunities out there for them at the Division II level, and certainly at our institutions. And as success for Charleston and Urbana and Wheeling, people are going to see that and notice it. And certainly, my children are in the soccer system, youth soccer system, and I want them to know that it doesn't all have to be about Division I. And to be honest with you, there are twice as many opportunities for females at the Division I level than there are for males. So right. It's a tough sport to break into on the Division I level if you're a boy, but also at the Division II level. Scholarshiping at the Division I level is 14 per team, but for the men it's 9.9.
Yeah, wrapping up.
It's kind of one of those odd figures, but you can still play. And one of the great things about Division II is that it truly is a dual purpose. You go to play your sport and you go to get an education. Division I is certainly sport heavy, trying to focus on maybe being a pro and things like that, even in soccer. But Division II is no cliche. It's student athletes, partial scholarships. Those kids are what you think the 1950s were in Division I. They're on the bus doing the homework, and things like that. That's what our league is, and we embrace that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there in your answer, but again, wrapping up, we see it's not just in soccer, but in all sports. What I've seen with the NCAA, the slogan they've been pushing the past few years is "I chose Division II," and that's something I think is very important for all potential college student athletes to see, is that there are options besides Division I. What would you like to see the Mountain East, specifically this year, do in terms of promoting that stance, letting athletes, particularly from West Virginia, because we have a plethora of very talented athletes in all sports, letting them know that there are options besides Division I. There are options at great Mountain East Conference schools.
Well, I think the first thing is quality. I think I chose Division II twice. I chose Division II as a student athlete, and then I was working in Division I and chose to come back to Division II because I love this level. But there can be a perception of Division II as being not quite good enough for Division I, right? I mean, to be honest with it. Right. So, but if you're going to make a choice, you want to go somewhere good. You want to go somewhere, that you are actually, not you're going there because you want to. You want to pursue a championship. You want to pursue an education. Not, well, I didn't get to go here, so now I'll go, and play here. That's not what our student athletes are. Our student athletes are, if I go here, I can play for a national championship. And so if we have that quality, and we do have that quality, and I think across the board in all our sports, then it's, so that's what we have to do. We have to say, look, these are quality. So you just don't roll out of bed and go play Division II. You have to be really good. So don't just go thinking that you're slumming it here, because that's not what's happening here in any sport.
So, Adam, were you a soccer player? I know you referenced that you were a soccer guy. Was that the sport you played in college?
I was not. I was actually a cross-country runner. I grew up in West Virginia, and as you said, soccer is very young in the state.
Right.
And so when I was growing up, we didn't have high school soccer. So I am that short, distance runner that probably, if I, growing up, if there was a ball, I probably would have kicked it and maybe played soccer. But in absence of a ball, I was just a cross-country runner.
Right. Well, so the reason I asked is because I've heard a lot of criticism from guys as far as growing soccer in the United States. I've heard criticism about the way that it's run at the college level compared to over in Europe, how they have kind of like the academy system. What are your thoughts on the state of college soccer as far as developing American players?
Well, it's an interesting question on a couple of levels. One, and I've said this before, if the American college soccer system is so bad, why are there so many foreign players coming here? Mm. You know what I mean? And thriving. It's because at 18, and when they realize they're not going to go pro, they don't know what the heck to do.
Right. Right. So do you think they're doing
goodness,
that?
I can go to the United States and get an education and play sport, and then maybe I'll go to the pros. What's better than that? But in America, it's difficult because you go pro, and try to find the best avenue to go pro, and that's a difficult situation from that. So I'm sorry, you were going to say?
Well, I was just saying, maybe some of those guys are coming over here because they realized they couldn't make it in the academy system, so their next best option is to get an education, and they use soccer as a platform to do that. Whereas compared to maybe just coming to play college soccer because they want to become a pro athlete, or they have the ability to do that.
It's that dual purpose that's acceptable. That's okay. It's okay to have both of those things and still have professional dreams and get an education. But to kind of go back to it, one of the things I think that needs to happen in college soccer is the extension of the season. As I said previously, the amount of games that they play in the time frame that they play it's not conducive for the development of a player. And if you look at it, they're already playing a spring season. They just aren't playing as many games. So the fall is too many games and not enough practice, and the spring's the opposite. And so I think that would go a long way. And there is a proposal now at the Division I level. It's kind of spearheaded by Sasha Swarovski at the University of Maryland to do this. And it's right now it's a Division I men's only. So the women haven't quite gotten there yet. Division II still kind of trying to figure it out because facilities are an issue. Administrative issues happen at that level when you have limited resources. So Division I men feel like the time is right to make this happen. So I'm encouraged by that. I think that's the biggest challenge to that is the season. But college soccer is, I think it's fun. I think it's exciting. I think it provides an opportunity for fans who don't have an MLS team or don't go to don't wake up on Saturday mornings to watch the Premier League to go see some really good high level play. So I'm a big advocate for the college game.
What is the number of games you'd like to see for college soccer?
I think the number of games is fine. I think it's how many they're
It's just
played.
spreading them out
I think
more.
it's the amount of time that they're played. So I think 22 games is fine. It just needs to be spread over a couple of months. If you're really curious about this, if you log on to the NSCAA, National Soccer Coaches Association of America, I apologize for that. They've had the whole proposal, and it's how many games you play. So you play half your conference schedule in the fall and the other half in the spring. And that's also, right now in Division I and Division II, your championship is played Friday, Sunday, which means you're playing the highest game, the most magnitude, within 36 hours of each other.
That's a quick turnaround.
So when everybody goes to watch, hey, this is the national championship game. This has got to be the best of the best. What are they seeing? They're seeing guys on tired legs. They're going to see a 0-0 game. They're going to see a game that's not played open and fun and exciting. So your showcase is now, shown this way. If it were to move fall to spring, you could have a whole week to prepare and really showcase your game in warm weather.
Yeah.
Right now, the championship's played in December. And so, if you move that game in the spring, you look at lacrosse, and people that aren't fans of lacrosse watch that championship game. It's, I think it's over one of the holidays. It draws huge TV ratings.
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. The stands are packed and a lot of those are true lacrosse fans, and they put them in the hotbeds. But it also means, they've also got the opportunity to go to warm weather, and they got a chance to support it. So those are some things that I think would certainly help grow the sport. So the number of games is okay. It's just the time, the compression of them right now is very difficult.
Hey, Adam, man, thanks so much for joining us. We talked about a ton of topics. That's some great information. We'd love for you to come on anytime you want. And actually, once you invite us down to the games, we like to do a live broadcast with you guys. And I think you guys have a lot of exciting things going on in the Mountain East Conference. You guys are really going to blow up here soon. Football season's going to put you on the map. But like you said, soccer is also going to be the up-and-coming sport. But, Adam, thanks for joining us, man. That's some great information. And best of luck to you in the conference going down the road.
Hey, we appreciate it. Anytime, just give me a call, and we like to be accessible, and we appreciate everything that you all do in covering not just Concord but the Mountain East.
Good deal, bud. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
All right, guys, that was Adam Zundell. I mean, that was just an absolute ton of information. We kind of covered the map there, but really, I think the main focus was I kind of going into it expecting a lot of football talk, but he really kind of took us down the road of building the conference, and he's excited about the soccer. I mean, both of us have backgrounds in soccer, announcing soccer for some smaller schools, Division I schools, but we've seen soccer kind of grow. And how is it up north? Is soccer really the secondary sport people are watching now?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely gotten bigger. I mean, you've seen the studies come out the last couple of years that kids 12 to 17 watch the MLS more than they do the MLB. I know in Massachusetts it is pretty big. My high school team was fairly big at my high school. I think my team won a couple of state championships while I was there. They're a good program. People dig it, man. They're into it. They're watching the European teams on the weekends. They're getting up early to do that. People are picking teams. They're going to these MLS games. It's a game that's growing. I wanted to ask him a little bit about the college game, because that is one of the criticisms I've heard. I've worked with guys who played here in the United States and know guys who play in Europe as well, and just kind of comparing and contrasting the two systems. And they just have issues with, as far as like the number of substitutions you're allowed to have at the college game. Just, smaller things like that, which, for what he's talking about, as far as getting an education and being able to play sports at the same time, it's great. But as far as developing American players, I don't think the NCAA is necessarily the best system to do that, and that
Right.
may be why we're a little bit behind some of the other countries when it comes to soccer.
You know, I worked for UNC Charlotte for a couple years announcing their soccer, and they made it to the national championship. They faced North Carolina one year, and you still see teams that would come in, or you go on the road, and they didn't even have facilities going at halftime. They just pop up a tent on the field somewhere and, you know, shut the flap on the tent, and that was their halftime. You've probably seen the same thing with college soccer. It really needs to grow. But like Adam kept saying, 2 games in 1 week, that's 90 minutes, not including extra time.
Yeah.
Of just going straight at it. And you're talking about headers, you know, running up and down the field for 90 minutes. That's a lot of work for a college kid in a week span.
It really is. And when I was, prior to joining WOAY, I actually had the opportunity to do a plethora of small college games. Our contract was Division II, Division III, NAIA. Some of these schools really put their effort into soccer, particularly ones that don't have football. But one of the first games I was able to call was University of Charleston, the year they went on that run to the national championship. And their facility, they did not have a designated locker room. As great as it was in the middle of a city park right next to an amphitheater. That was kind of the shelter in case of inclement weather, so to speak. But I think the money will come. I don't think it's a question of if the money will come, it's just a matter of when. And I think, like we talk about the whole debate at all levels of the game, if people realize that, you know, football maybe health-wise is not the best idea, then they'll start investing more in soccer.
Well, they still have Title IX, and that helps women's soccer.
Adam referenced it. It's hard when you have football at a school to develop a strong men's soccer program because of the Title IX.
Yeah.
That's, you know, over 100 players on the men's side that you're devoting to football. So you have to create that equal opportunity on the women's side, and that makes it hard to really put a lot of investment into your soccer team,
Yeah.
you know, financially or otherwise, because you have to devote so many resources to balancing things out on the women's scale. So that makes it very difficult at the college level.
You might be able to correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe WVU actually doesn't have a men's gymnastics team because they have a men's soccer team.
I think that might be right.
You have to pick and choose.
Yeah.
But that's usually the
yeah.
case. You'll give up a swimming team, maybe a men's swimming team, because of the, you know, a different women's sport. Title IX is a great law. I think it's done some great things, but I think it does need to be looked at a little bit more. But that's
It has
kind of a
been, what,
separate
40 some
conversation,
years now since it's
Over
been
40 years,
introduced?
yeah.
I mean, there's how many times have we seen legislation introduced that's been changed that's younger than Title IX?
But I think what Adam said, I think he hit it on the head, is that this gives them an opportunity. Like you also said, if you don't make the academy, you're not going to make some European league at a young age. You know, come to the States, get an education.
Yeah, that's
and
why
grow
these
the
guys are
sport
coming here from Europe. They're not coming here to become great soccer players.
Right.
They're coming here because they couldn't make the academy system, so they figure the next best option is to come get an education using soccer to do so.
And there's a road to MLS now. We've seen Ohio's really big with the MLS. You know, their teams are expanding. We see some great teams out in Seattle, Los Angeles. But as soccer grows, I think the college landscape's going to catch up and maybe even take over a little bit more in popularity. Do you agree? You see soccer coming? Has it hit its point yet?
I'm not entirely sure about that because, for example, being in Columbus, you have the Crew, they have their own academy, and then you also see Ohio State. They have a men's soccer program of their own, but there's not necessarily that partnership in a way in terms of getting together just to play friendly matches or anything like that. And I'm not sure if there ever will be, particularly for Ohio State, because they're so invested in football, men's basketball, the big revenue-producing sports, that I would love to see Ohio State invest a lot in men's soccer, but right now it's not happening, and I certainly don't really see it happening for another couple of years. Whereas another school where football maybe isn't as big a priority, which, I mean, football's number one priority, I would assume, for every school that has it, but you have that opportunity to invest more in men's soccer because it's another fall sport that does very successful.
What it's going to take is they're going to need a star to come out of one of these college programs. It's going to, you know, someone for Ohio State soccer to be relevant, for people to really like get into it and care about it at a regional level, and then have the sport of Division I soccer be cared about at a national level. They're going to need a star to come out of the college game and put the MLS on the map or go to the Premier League and become one of the major players over there. Until that happens, I mean, people have been saying for years now that, oh, soccer's the next thing in America, soccer's coming up, soccer's, and it hasn't happened yet. And the reason is because the best players aren't from here and they don't play here.
Right.
And you don't see a lot of guys come out of the college system and become professional players, or at least not at the very high level.
Yeah, I think you're really rooting for the team itself in college. You don't know those individual players per se. I mean, great example. Mountaineer women are ranked number 3 in the country right now in soccer.
They are.
But
Not
we
many
open
people
up,
know that.
yeah, we
Not
open
many
up
people
our
know that.
show with the football game that is yet to happen.
Exactly, football. Yeah. And not just the fact that, but also, who's representing. WVU had 2 Olympians from women's soccer playing for Team Canada. They were on the squad for last year's World Cup. They were on the squad for this year's Olympics because they're under the age of, well, actually, women's soccer, there's no age limit. They don't have the limits that the men's game does with qualifying for the Olympics. But that's another discussion for another day. But going back to what Tom was saying, one example I can see, Ohio State had a very talented player by the name of Roger Espinoza, who actually was part of the World Cup a couple years ago playing for Honduras, though. Honduras, we don't really pay a lot of attention to Honduras unless we play them in CONCACAF qualifying. And then he was able to make it to the Premier League, but with Wigan Athletic, a team that,
They're no longer up there.
They're no longer up there. They're trying to get back into the Premier League, but the whole relegation system. So it is really that big mountain still they have to climb.
Yeah, because I didn't. Did you know who that guy was?
No.
No, not at all.
No,
and, if you were local, you probably.
Yeah, I only knew him because he played for Ohio State. He was there one year, I think about 10 years ago, when they made the national championship game. But apart from that, I wouldn't have known who he was.
Yeah, and they're not going to draw, the NCAA is not going to draw that top level talent on the men's side until they change some of the things like substitutions. It needs to be, everything rules wise needs to be identical to the Premier League. And then that'll be a start to drawing more guys. But I mean, I think it should be set up more like an academy system where they're focusing on developing skills and not necessarily just going out trying to win the national championship.
Right.
And that's one of the main issues that the United States has as a soccer country is everyone always says, oh, they're in such great shape, they're such well-conditioned athletes, but they don't have the skill that other countries have. And it's because they grow up in systems where they're playing to win all the time as opposed to developing skills.
Well, that's enough soccer talk for me for today because tonight's the night. College football is here. Well, actually, last week.
Last week, Cal, Hawaii, and
that
Sydney,
surprised us all.
Australia.
Yeah, we're all sitting here for Friday Night Football.
I was looking up a couple weeks ago just to see the schedule, who all play where, and I'm seeing Friday, August 26th. I'm like, who's playing on Friday the 26th? Oh, that game is in Australia.
Yeah.
That threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, Matt was like, hey, there's a college football game. And I was like, yeah, it's recorded, right? And he's like, no, it's on. It's on. This was last Friday.
We're back, man.
Yeah, we're actually back.
We're here.
We are here. All right, guys, let's take another quick break here. You're listening to The Change Up on WAY Sports. And welcome back into the Change Up on WAY Sports here with Matt Digby and Tom Bill. You can check us out on Twitter and Facebook at WAY Sports. Let's give our weekly shout out to your boy for the music.
My boy, John Canada with Gritty City Records. He's out of Richmond, Virginia. Creates some really nice hip-hop beats. He's done some really good work, so definitely check him out on SoundCloud. It's John Canada, and he's with the record label Gritty City Records, so check them out.
And check these guys out on the fifth quarter, all your Friday Night Football highlights. Great show your first week, guys. You guys blew out the competition. I'll say it here and now. I don't care if they're listening, watching. You guys absolutely.
Hopefully they're listening, because that means we're putting out a good product.
Yeah, you guys actually just romped the competition when it comes to the highlights for Friday Night Football. This is your home for those Friday Night Football highlights. Sponsored by Wendy's, right?
Sponsored by Wendy's in Southern West Virginia. We have the Wendy's Fan Cam Fan of the Week, Northside Chevy Gabe of the Week, and a lot of great matchups to choose from. Our Gabe of the Week will be Woodrow Wilson at Greenbrier East, two teams that lost their Week 1 matchups, but they're definitely looking forward to a bit of redemption.
Yeah, Woodrow should not have lost to Riverside.
That was
Not take anything away from Riverside. But
I was at Woodrow just a couple days ago, actually speaking with Coach Surratt and the guys, and they were kind of very ready to put the Riverside game behind them. Greenbrier East, they had to go on the road to James Monroe, a team that returned nearly everybody from that playoff squad. So you kind of have that as, they're not going to use the term excuse, so I won't, but if you had to absolutely look at one thing that could have gone their way, it would have been the fact that, they're having to replace a lot of skill position players. James Monroe did not have that issue.
Yeah, you lose Xavier Lawson, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It definitely makes a big difference.
It really does. Other big games on tap. You see the helmets. We coordinated it, so we got teams playing each other. We have Fayetteville going to Valley. That game at Valley will be a 5 o'clock start because they still are looking to put lights up on their home field. And also over on this side, we have Greenbrier West at Midland Trail. Both teams coming off those losses, their losses in Week 1, looking to get in the win column in Week 2.
yeah, boys, I've been preaching Fayetteville to you in your ears. I think they're primed for a really good season. Keep momentum rolling. Fortunately, a Valley team, I think that's very beatable. Valley had a lot of issues down there. The heat really got to them last week. It's supposed to be a little bit cooler, so I think things
so.
will change a little bit down there at Valley. And like Matt said, they don't have lights up. Of course, the school systems here are going through their own difficult challenges, but Valley is playing football, and that's the main thing. The kids could go out there and have a good time and represent their community and their families. Like Matt said, 5 o'clock start time for that.
Yeah, not just playing football, but they have their own field. That was their big issue last year. They had to play their designated home games at Midland Trail at Fayetteville. Now they were able to, what they did was they relocated the baseball field to Boomer, and now they're using the old baseball field as the designated football field. And when I went up there for our season preview, they already had, the lines painted for the most part. They had the stands, they had the materials ready, just needed to assemble it.
Yeah.
But a lot of excitement, I know, for Valley. They were ready to get the season going, and they're ready to, I think, put in a good performance, I think, against Fayetteville. And then I'm not sure how that game's going to play out, but if they're able to pull the upset, I would consider it an upset if they're able to beat Fayetteville. But I'm sure they'll be looking to do a lot better than 1-9, their record last year.
Yep. But the big news for me is college football. Some great games on tap, as always, to open up the college football season. Labor Day weekend, even Sunday here on WRAY, you can check out Notre Dame and Texas. I think that'll be a great barometer of how Texas's season's going to go. Notre Dame, a stiff opponent. Notre Dame is favored by 3.5 currently. That game starts at 7:30 on Sunday. Monday, another great game. Ole Miss and Florida State. You got Ole Miss ranked number 11. Florida State, high expectations. Too early to look down the road at Clemson already, but you have to get your season going.
Do you have an upset pick for this week?
I do have an upset pick. I'm taking points. Now this is points,
Okay.
not straight win. I'm taking
All right.
Auburn over Clemson.
What's the spread?
The spread 7.5.
Okay.
And it's at
Okay.
Jordan-Hare Stadium down in Auburn. I've been down in Auburn. Boys, that is a loud state. I went to Texas also.
That's an atmosphere.
Yeah, Texas is
Yeah.
an atmosphere. Texas looks small on TV. They get loud, man. Those crowds are on there, so that's a tough place to play. But Jordan-Hare, great atmosphere, great fans. Really the best fans, other than Mountaineer fans, of course. But great fan base to be around. I think Clemson is in for a handful of all they want in that first game.
It's gonna be a tough
I
one,
think
for sure.
that's going to be a lot of games to keep an eye on. Georgia, North Carolina is something I would like to keep an eye on. That game, I'm pretty sure, is at the Georgia Dome. North Carolina, one of those teams you wonder if they're finally going to turn the corner. Last year, they were able to win their division, and they gave Clemson a run for their money in the ACC championship game. I think Larry Fedora is the right man for the job after Butch Davis. He went out not necessarily on his terms, and then the 1 year with Everett Withers as the head coach, that didn't exactly go according to
Has
plan.
Butch Davis ever gone out on his terms? But yet ESPN seems to always put him on TV for some reason.
I'd say he went out on his own terms when he left Miami to take the Browns job. I think that was kind of his decision
I think
in a way.
he saw the mud in the water. He knew what was coming.
Hindsight, maybe he'll take the Browns job.
Yeah.
That goes for anybody.
Well, he knew he was going to get in some trouble. He knew his past.
Hey, Matt, can you tell me a little something about the Ryder Cup? What's going on with that?
So the Ryder Cup, the big thing with that is this was the weekend where the top 8 in point standings for Team USA would be decided. So that tournament has come and gone. Patrick Reed with the win in the trying to remember the name of the championship that just finished up, but Patrick Reed with the win. He's on the team. A lot of other names that we've heard. Phil Mickelson is in. Dustin Johnson is in. Jordan Spieth is in. But one of the big names just missing out, I know they're bringing up Ricky Fowler. He was kind of in control for that final automatic spot, but he was not able to win the tournament over the weekend, so he's going to have to hope Davis Webb III picks him as a captain's pick. Also, Bubba Watson, he finished 9th in points, just missing out on that top 8, so he's going to have to hope he gets the captain's pick from Davis Webb III. But the one other reason I bring it up is I'm not really for the way they do the captain's picks. In the past, the 3 or 4 that the captain had the opportunity to select on the team, he just did it all in one setting. The way it's set up this year is in 2 weeks, Davis Webb III is going to pick 3 of the 4 captain's picks, and then 2 weeks after that, he'll make the 4th captain's pick the week right before the Ryder Cup starts, which I personally don't think is the best option.
So why do they do it like that?
I think the reason they're trying to do it is because they want Davis to look at the hottest player, because, theoretically, whoever is the hottest right now won't necessarily be that hot when they finally get to Hazeltine at the end of September. And likewise, someone who might not be hot right now could get hot in the FedEx Cup playoffs and be that final captain's pick and end up winning the most points for the U.S. against the Europeans. But I know it's going to be a long change. There was a lot of change based on what was done in 2014 because that was a disaster, the way Tom Watson handled Team USA, and Phil Mickelson wasn't exactly that shy about it in the post-tournament press conference. He wasn't afraid to stand up there and call out Watson in front of the international media. So what they did was they had a task force where they brought in a lot of players from the past and a lot of previous captains. Tiger Woods was being included in that task force, and he's going to be helping out as an assistant captain this fall. I think they have the steps in place. It's just a matter of, can Davis Webb III get the captain's picks right?
So how do they choose how does Davis Webb III become captain of the Ryder Cup team?
It's partially that task force. They kind of look at, the body of work they've accumulated as time as a player. Davis Webb III, veteran of many Ryder Cups as a player. He was also the captain in 2012, where the United States did extremely well on Friday and Saturday, but then they just had an absolute meltdown when the Europeans just rallied from a 10-6 deficit to reclaim the cup. United States still looking for their first win in since 2008. That was the only one they won this century. But I think it's going to be also very important in terms of the Ryder Cup, because I know a lot of Americans, they probably view it at this point as, every 2 years we have to lose to the Europeans in this. It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, it nearly wasn't that way in 2012. The United States nearly getting the win at Medina until the Europeans rallied, although granted the Europeans may bring up, you did the exact same thing to us when the U.S. rallied in 1999 at Brookline Country Club. But I think it's going to be very important in terms of how future Ryder Cups are held and how future Ryder Cups are staged, who's specifically picked for captain, the different task forces that go in. And I think it's going to be a very unique process, and we'll look forward to seeing how it all unfolds.
Are you excited for the Ryder Cup at all?
No,
Okay.
not at all. But I am curious what your prediction is.
I think the U.S. will win. That's maybe right now a little bit of bias, but I think the pieces in place, having Davis Webb III get that opportunity for redemption after he came so close at Medina. He's back on U.S. soil. Playing on U.S. soil as opposed to European soil makes a big difference, I can tell, for this U.S. team, because the Ryder Cups in Europe, the past 3 or 4 of them, only one of them has been close. The other were just blowouts. U.S. were able to be much more competitive on American golf courses in recent Ryder Cups.
Is Dustin Johnson part of the team?
Dustin Johnson is automatically part of the team, having won
That
the
means
U.S. Open.
his wife, Gretzky's daughter's going to be there.
Paulina will be there. Hell yeah.
And they're not playing Canada, so Gretzky, the Ryder
you
Cup.
can move from the United
The Ryder
States.
Cup is strictly
Oh, yeah.
United States against Europe. Canada, they have their own, with the President's Cup, it's the United States versus an international squad, including Canada, in odd-numbered years, but even-numbered years, it's strictly United States against Europe. So Paulina will be rooting for the Americans.
I think it's Ricky Fowler and Jordan Spieth really have to step up their play. I mean, everybody keeps waiting on Ricky Fowler to step up his play with his ridiculous outfits. You're making a statement more with your clothes than your play. But
And that's
Looks
one
good,
reason.
man.
That's one reason I'm
Decked out in
not
that Puma.
particularly
Yeah,
a
the
fan of
Puma.
Ricky
He
Fowler.
looks good in that
but
Puma.
talk about stepping up his play. He did not step up his play over the weekend, and as a result, Patrick Reed beats him to that automatic spot. So Fowler's now going to have to hope Davis Webb III.
and that tournament was the Barclays.
It was the Barclays. Yeah, that's right. Now I remember that. Or thank you for reminding me of that.
Now
Well,
you remember.
I will be watching 0 holes of the Ryder Cup. Go Team USA. What I will be watching is the stretch run in the MLB. We got that last month of the season. So September 1st today, they just expanded the rosters up to 40 guys. It should be interesting. Yohan Moncada, the Red Sox top prospect, just got called up. So it'll be fun to see him play, but it'll also be fun to see some of these teams here battling for playoff spots as we go down the stretch. You know, the way they redid the postseason a couple of years ago, it puts so much emphasis on winning the division because otherwise you're in a one-game wild card where pretty much anything can happen. So, you know, a lot of these teams are going to try to make pushes for the division if they can. I mean, I think we're talking about the Pirates. They're pretty much out of the talking division.
we
You know, the
called
Cubs,
them out
Cubs got that.
Last week
Cubs
we
got
did
that
call them
locked
out,
up.
and look what happened.
Man,
They
they're
swept
back
the
and forth.
Brewers.
I can't figure this team out. They trade Mark Melanson in a way you think they're going to be sellers, and then all of a sudden Ivan Nova comes in and pitches outstanding for them since he's been brought over from the Yankees. They got to within a half game by the end of the weekend, and then they get swept by the Cubs, and it's back out to 3.5.
They swept the Brewers, and then, like you said, they got swept by the Cubs. And we're actually joking because I called them all for dead last week, and then
I think we all did.
Yeah, we saw them sweep the Cubs, and a couple other losses worked in their favor. You look at them, and they're like, oh, they're half game out. But then you look at the schedule, like, oh, there's Jake Arrieta and the Cubs.
They keep igniting the spark, but
Yep.
they can't sustain the fire, and
Yeah.
that's what you need to get into the postseason. If they can figure it out and maybe turn one of these strings of a few wins, if they can turn that into a true hot streak, they could really make a run at this thing. And a team like that gets in with a hot down the stretch run, they're always very dangerous in the postseason. That's usually the team that you see make a run towards the World Series.
Yeah.
Is the team that comes in hot.
See, I think that team for me is the Mets. The Mets have swept, or they
They've been
didn't
playing
sweep,
real
they have
well,
snuck
yeah.
in. They're a game and a half out of the wild card now. The wild
They
card
were
in
500 a couple
yeah.
weeks ago.
Yeah, wild card in NL is San Fran is up by 2 on St. Louis. St. Louis is the other one that's in right now, and you got the Mets a game and a half back, and Pittsburgh 2.5. Miami's taking that slide, which is, you know, they still have some talent down there, and they're hoping to make that stretch run. They're 3.5 back, but as you keep alluding to, Boston's up 2 games in an AL. Baltimore is in, and they're tied with Detroit, actually. So they would have a one-game playoff for the one-game playoff.
The American League East is a real dogfight right now. You got 3 teams all separated by, I think, no more than 3 games from Toronto in first place down to Baltimore.
You still have the Yankees that could slip
And
in there.
I don't think they will. I mean, they traded away so many guys. Even the
did.
fact that they're still over 500 is amazing to me. I thought they would have, they basically said, we're done for this year when they traded all those guys away, and yet they still keep winning at a pretty consistent level. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They're kind of too far out of it, and there's too many good teams in front of them in the division.
Any
but,
other year,
it's been surprising.
Any other year, if I tell you
got
the
4
Yankees
teams
have
over
to beat
500.
out the Astros and the Orioles to get in the playoffs, you'd pick them every year, right?
Oh, for the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the
And
last
that's what they faced
The
now.
last few. I mean, I've been saying this to my Yankee friends for a couple of years now because the Red Sox were going through this rebuild process in basically after they disbanded everyone after 2011, and they kind of snuck that World Series into 2013 just for fun. But for the most part, they've been rebuilding since 2011, and I've been telling the Yankees guys, like, when these big contracts is A-Rod, Teixeira, Sabathia, and these guys start getting old, and you've got all that dead money sitting there. Like, you guys are going to want to do what we're doing right now, and the Red Sox, I've got that come up right now. They're battling for the division. If David Price pitches like David Price the whole season, they're in first place by several games right now.
Yeah.
But the Yankees are kind of just now hitting that reset button, and good for them. I mean, they traded away a couple of relievers, and they got really good prospects in return. So the fact that they're above 500 now, and they're only going to get better 2-3 years down the road, it's kind of scary.
The AL East could be the division in the playoffs. We'll have Toronto ahead of the division now, 2 games. But you got, like we just said, Boston, Baltimore, and the Yankees all in play for those wild card spots. And then, obviously, it looks like Cleveland and Texas is going to run away with their divisions eventually here. But the stretch run of the playoffs is very exciting. I think it's going to be a good time. I hate the one-game playoff, but
Not a fan.
What are you gonna
I'm not a fan either of it. Yeah, I mean, I think it had couple experimental years, but hopefully the fact that Rob Manfred's still fairly new to his position of commissioner, there are a lot of other things, and in my opinion, that need his attention a lot more than just deciding a one-game playoff or the wild card. But hopefully he is able to address that fairly soon.
You take a sport that requires such a large sample size to really determine who's better than someone else, and you reduce it down to one game, and it's just, you might as well roll dice.
Yeah.
Might as well flip a coin to see who gets in.
That's exactly right. And then if you make it out of that one game, it's a good possibility you're using up all your pitchers.
Well, you're
to
definitely
even get
using
past.
your best pitcher.
yeah.
I mean, don't tell that to Kansas City. I mean, they had the one-game playoff, and a couple years ago, look how that was the year they made the World Series.
Well, it can work out, but I mean, they just as easily could have lost that game and then not
San
even
Francisco.
have a postseason.
Yeah, San Francisco
Yeah.
did the same
You
thing.
really-
I think they had
really
to rally
never-
just to force extras against Oakland. Now that I think about it, yeah.
You really never know in these one-game playoffs. I mean, you can try, you can line up your best starter and all that, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's one game. That's not, you play 162 and the all comes down to one. It's unbelievable.
Well, guys, my bringing it home is Mountaineer football. The time is here. We want to encourage everybody to head up to Morgantown this weekend. I'm sure you already have plans. The game looks like it's going to be sold out. They've done some great things to the facilities, and they keep working on it. But just a great time to support the state and the Mountaineer football time. Opening up an SEC opponent. I was telling my dad the other day, he's got to miss a game. I said, you're not going to see Missouri for another 20, 30 years in Morgantown. I think the excitement itself, just having this game, should encourage everybody to head up to Morgantown. But college football, boys, it's the hard part about Saturday is I want to see so many games.
It really is.
You know what I mean? And we're going to Morgantown, so you have to hustle to the TV somewhere to catch some of these. But it's
Absolutely.
a great lineup, and you can see a lot of it here on WOY.
I mean, I know for me, from a bias, wanting to follow my Ohio Bobcats, they play at 3:30 on Saturday, which ideally would be great, but except we will be getting post-game and driving on the way back. So
And you got a
hopefully
long
we can,
drive. You're pretty much going through a whole game on that drive back.
Pretty much, yeah. That's exactly the case.
But you got a tough life, man, getting to be on the sidelines of Mountaineer football.
Oh yeah,
God
absolutely.
forbid you have to do a press conference.
Woe is me there, yeah.
You got some first world problems, brother.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, guys,
no, it's going to be fun. I hope it is sold out because the two games I was at last year were not sold out. Texas Tech, I remember a lot of empty seats. Iowa State, it was Thanksgiving weekend, so they kind of have that as an excuse.
it's hunting season, bud.
Yeah, that is very true.
All right, guys. Well, you've been listening to the Change Up on WAY Sports. Make sure you check us out on Facebook and Twitter at WAY Sports. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you share the podcast with your friends and let them know this is a place to be here for all your fifth quarter action for high school football and everything else in between. For Tom and Matt, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.